We're following breaking news. A federal judge just sentenced former New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez to 11 years in prison in his corruption case. We want to take you now to CBS News New York coverage of the sentencing.
My kids, and essentially the judge comes back and says, you should have thought of that. I mean, the prosecution said, hey, guess what? We could have had someone else there who was going to do the job and give up all that stuff and sacrifice for the people in New Jersey, but then not take all that money. How impactful, Professor Bader, is the fact that this was a very large amount of cash allegedly taken, and the word gold bars was being used, something that they even had pictures of. How impactful do you think that was to the jury in this case?
I think it was quite impactful. First of all, in the sentencing, of course, the amount of money plays a big part in the sentencing. But I think just, here in terms of the evidence, I mean, this could have been, out of a made-for-TV movie, right?
Yeah.
You have the visuals of the cash stuffed everywhere.
In his jacket, yeah.
Right. Everywhere throughout the house, right? The senator's wife asking for exercise equipment and air purifiers, like giving like a shopping list. You have gold bars, which I think is, unusual in a case and gives this air of maybe this sinister kind of foreign intrigue. So I think a lot of this was quite a spectacle for the jury.
And in addition to the spectacle, I mean, it is pretty extraordinary. The charges involving getting bribes in connection with Egypt and Qatar, that is very serious stuff. And the judge did mention that when he was giving his sentence.
Absolutely. I think that was really weighed on the judge, thinking about how this man would sort of put his own greed before, the nation's security, and that he had this position of power and was really willing to use his influence in ways that undercut foreign policy. And so I think that was something that that the judge wanted to give a significant deterrent sentence for.
Now, at one point, as I said, Menendez said, I'm a chastened man, but he never apologized in the sense of, yeah, I did it, and I'd like to apologize because he's got to go and appeal right now. But what does that mean when he just gives that little bit that says, hey, I kind of understand I might have gone left or right or wrong? Was that just an appeal to the judge?
I think he's trying to sort of, split the baby a little bit. But again, because he made a decision to go to trial, but also to maintain his innocence post-trial, he had to make a strategic choice. And although I think it's important for judges to hear remorse and acceptance of responsibility, and it's also something under the sentencing guidelines that will result in a slight reduction in the guideline sentence. But here, I think the senator made a strategic choice that he's going to appeal, he's going to maintain his innocence, and also remember his wife is also coming up for trial as well.
Yeah, her trial is coming up in March. I don't think we've gotten an indication from the courthouse as of yet as to whether or not he would. I know he asked for his sentence to be postponed, not only because of his wife's trial, but she has been battling cancer, and he said he wants to help her in that case. What are the next steps? A lot of people are saying, there have been so many corruption trials on politicians' cases in the U.S. where it's gone all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court has raised the bar to get a conviction and uphold a conviction. Do you see a possibility of real good grounds for appeal here?
So I definitely think we will see an appeal on those grounds. The Supreme Court, as you've said, has narrowed the laws to what constitutes public corruption. And the court has tried to justify that narrowing, saying that they don't want to capture conduct where officials are just being responsive to constituents and trying to help them with various matters. But it, of course, has made it much more difficult. The test that the Supreme Court has laid out has made it much more difficult for prosecutors to gain convictions and then to have those upheld. But I think here, even under this narrower definition, where an official has to have taken a specific official act and there has to be a direct quid pro quo, I think this is, you really have your sort of textbook case here of seeing that direct quid pro quo. And so I think it will withstand appeal. There are probably some other issues that we'll also see on appeal, but I'd be surprised if the case gets overturned.
Discussing the breaking news now, former Senator Bob Menendez sentenced to 11 years in prison for bribery and extortion charges. Professor, if you would stand by, we're going to go to Christine Sloan now, who's been in Lower Manhattan. And you haven't just been in Lower Manhattan covering this trial, Christine. You have known the former senator for many years, and I think you were also seeing the reporting that we're getting from Alice Gaynor of him sobbing in court. Knowing him personally as you do, did that surprise you?
No, it didn't surprise me. You know, I've known him since 1995, and that is when I believe he became a U.S. Congressman. No, it didn't surprise me because he has maintained that he is innocent, that basically he has told us that the government exaggerated the case, presenting these all of the cash that we saw, the gold bars to the jury. He believes that much of the work or whatever he was convicted of doing was in his job duty as a U.S. senator. So, no, I'm not surprised that he was crying. You know, Alice was saying some of the things he said along the way, that I have lost everything that I have cared for, that every day being awake is a punch. And, of course, as you said, Dick, the judge said to him, look, you know, somewhere along the way you became a corrupt politician. What's interesting is that back in the 1980s, former Senator Robert Menendez went and actually testified against a corrupt mayor in Union City. He had to wear a bulletproof vest to do that. So pretty extraordinary. And at that point in his career, he was considered a rising star in the Democratic Party. So today is certainly, as he said, a punch in the gut to him, Dick.
Yeah, and Christine, you know very well, he had a previous case in 2017 that ended in a hung jury, a corruption case. In fact, I believe the government's attorney brought that up and the judge shut him down and said that has nothing to do with this case, but it did have to do perhaps what's in the back of the mind of a judge who says, hey, this is not the first go-around. I know officially he can't comment on that, but when you look at both these cases and when you hear what you just said was somewhere along the way you lost your way, there's such a balance to this case in the sense that this was a man who did do a lot of good. The judge mentioned that. And yet, at the end, it was a spectacular fall. How do you put that all together? How do you characterize that, Christine?
You know, it's just really hard to comprehend this. Knowing him, you know, starting back in 1995, he was always a very reserved politician. He, you know, dotted his I's, crossed his T's, and, you know, as you said, the judge saying somewhere along the way he lost his way. I think that he truly, again, believes that he is innocent, that some of the things that he's been convicted of doing was just what he believes were part of his constituent services. And his attorneys have said that they're going to appeal this case. Now, the other question is that whether he would actually receive a pardon from President Donald Trump. Now, former Senator Menendez has been a very strong Democrat. He's worked for his constituents, as he said. He helped victims of Superstorm Sandy. I think that for him, and that's just my opinion, that's not having spoken to his attorneys or having spoken to him, for him, receiving a pardon, if it even would happen, would be a last resort. Because, mind you, his son is a U.S. congressman covering Hudson County, a very Democratic stronghold. So this would not help his son's career. So again, you know, so much remains to be seen. His attorneys have said they are going to appeal this case, and we'll have to see where it goes. And again, if there was a pardon, I think it would definitely be a last resort, Dick.
And you mentioned before his daughter also, a news commentator, the son who I remember just, I guess it was about a few months, not even a year ago, months ago, was when he won his office again because he is in a Democratic stronghold. But I couldn't help but think in my mind what a day it might have been for the children in the courtroom, watching their father from a very early age being one of the... Let's put in context just how powerful this man was. In charge of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. That's one of the most powerful posts in all of U.S. government. And for them to see that today in court must have been heartbreaking, Christine.
Well, certainly, Dick, it was heartbreaking. We can tell you, and as you said, Alice Gaynor has been in court this entire time. She tells us that his daughter, who is a TV personality, along with his son, were in court with him. His sister was also there. Now, you know, as we've been reporting, he is the son of Cuban immigrants. His parents fled Fidel Castro's Cuba to come to this country for a better life. He described how he was the first in his family to go to college. So this is all gut-wrenching for his family. And of course, Congressman Robert Menendez Jr. has, wrote a letter to the judge saying, his dad deserves to spend time with his grandchildren. So we'll have to see if Menendez comes out here and addresses the media.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that the former senator, he had pleaded that he be allowed to defer his sentence from today so he could take care of his wife, and then there was her trial. But I hadn't heard any reporting whether that was the case. Can he defer his sentence right now, or do we not know that yet?
It's unclear at this point.
Yeah.
We can tell you that his wife's trial is scheduled for March. So it was delayed. They were supposed to, be on trial together along with Fred Davies and Wael Hanna, but her trial was postponed because of a cancer diagnosis. So we're just going to have to wait and see exactly what happens on all of this, Dick. But I can tell you that, I did speak to him when I was in there. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial. So we'll have to see what the next move will be by his attorneys.
Senator Robert Menendez, former senator, sentenced to 11 years in prison for bribery and extortion.